I can't understand why everyone's so down all of a sudden. The Canadiens won the other night. Well, these ones did. But we're not a Soccer Canada podcast. We're a Montreal Canadiens hockey podcast. We'll talk about the other Canadiens and how they've been playing on this week's edition of Hockey Inside Out. I tried to be positive. I'm Julian McKenzie, alongside the usual suspects. Stu Cowan of the Montreal Gazette is here. Rick Green, former Stanley Cup champion and former assistant coach for the Montreal Canadiens, is here. Jessica Rusnak of CBC Daybreak is here. And we welcome all the fans who have been able to stick through it to this point because we're trying to find positives when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens. We know it's been pretty tough to this point in the year. They have not made it easy with the results that they've had. That includes the one that they had on Tuesday night against the New York Rangers. They did hang in a little close, but they did lose by a score of 3-2. What did you think?
Left.
Look, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. Hey, and there's a chance, you know what? Maybe the Canadiens, they do something where it will be a little bit more newsworthy. Maybe they go on a winning streak. It can't all be doom and gloom with the Montreal Canadiens. I'll give them this. Like they tried to show some spunk against the New York Rangers. Michael Pezzetta, for whatever reason, picked a fight with Ryan Reeves. I'm sorry. Before I get to the I don't get why he did that. That is just, I get he's trying to just make the most of his opportunity here. He did not need to do that. I'm still convinced he did not realize he was fighting Ryan Reeves until they did the little standoff. I'm convinced. But anyway.
You know what, Julian, I have to give this kid unbelievably full marks for what he did. And the statement that he made by doing what he did should be on the team. I mean, whether or not, he realized, I'm quite sure he did what he was in for, but the courage that it took for him to challenge him like he did and basically send a message that, listen, I want to be here. I'm going to do whatever it takes to stay here. He deserves a lot of credit for that. So, hats off to him.
No, Rick, fighting's coming out of the game. It's not like back when you played, but I'll disagree with you, Joel. I think he went into that game Pezzetta knowing he was going to fight Ryan Reeves and just waiting for the moment. And when Reeves hit him, he said, okay, here's my chance. He's got to, he's a guy who, the road he has taken to the NHL has been a long, winding, bumpy road. And now that he's here, he's willing to do anything to try and stay here, including fighting the biggest, toughest guy in the NHL. I mean, Ryan Reeves is basically the last of the so-called enforcers still in the league because he can skate well enough that you can still put him on the ice. But I mean, talk about a line between maybe courage and crazy, but he survived it. And I'm sure the guys on the bench and on a team that has been so flat with no life, for a guy to do that and come out of it alive, I think that sends a spark through the team. It really does.
And I think we've been talking about trying to have a positive spin on this episode. Well, Michael Pezzetta has definitely been one positive so far this season with the Canadiens. He had a good training camp, didn't make the team, been called up, has made the most of his opportunity, even taking a very risky decision like he did. But, that's sometimes what they need. And I think if more people sort of had that mindset as Michael Pezzetta, I think they might be winning a little bit more games.
Yeah, I think it took him a few games, but I think he now has the Gordie Howe hat trick. I think he has a goal, an assist, and a fight in the NHL. And for a kid, I mean, he played well during training camp in the preseason. It's hard not to like him. Like when you interview him, he just seems like a real likable guy. And I think he's a positive type of guy in the room right now. And I think the coach can use him to some of the other guys saying, look what this guy's willing to do to try and win a hockey game. What are you willing to do type of thing. So I think that sent a pretty strong message what he did against the Rangers and Ryan Reeves. But man, I can't imagine his heart must have been pounding, man, when he squared off. And
luckily, I guess that he didn't receive one of those major blows that Reeves had sent out, because I think it would have sent him into next month easily. So it was just a real big move of courage, and the bench realized that, and he's the kind of guy that you want to have on your team.
Okay.
I've seen Ryan Reeves in the locker room after the games, and he is a big, scary-looking dude, man. It's like muscle on muscle. He's got muscle. He's just a big, tough, mean guy.
Okay, so I appreciate you guys seeing the good in the Pezzetta fight. I'm willing to concede there is some good to that. I still thought it was a little reckless, but fine. You guys know a little bit better than me on that. What about Cayden Primeau? What about his performance against the New York Rangers on Tuesday night?
I thought he did a great job. I mean, he came in a real tough situation, knowing that the Canadiens have been struggling, and they tested him early, and he made the big save when he needed to. And I think as the game went on, I think he started to get a little more confident in his play, and he did a good job. So I'm really happy for him because his other opportunities were not the best. It seemed like everything was going by him every time that he played, and it's a tough position, and they threw him into the bright lights of New York City, and he responded in a very positive way. So that's promising and good to see, and hopefully they can build on that because, like I said before, he hadn't had a real good start in other games that he was given opportunity, and he did the job really well, and happy for him.
Yeah, he played well in a tough situation, as Rick said, getting thrown into Madison Square Garden and getting called up unexpectedly after Jake Allen got hurt. I hope they keep playing him. Jake Allen, even before he got hurt, looked like a guy who really needed a rest. And Jake Allen isn't the future of goaltending for the Canadiens, and neither is Samuel Montembeault. The future goaltender for the Canadiens is supposed to be Cayden Primeau. So what an opportunity now to play him. I mean, there's no real pressure, win or lose. This team isn't going anywhere. They're not making the playoffs. He played a solid game last night. I think he deserves another start. And what an opportunity for him. He went into this season, Carey Price, they figured he would be back sooner rather than later. Jake Allen, then they claimed Montembeault off waivers. And he must have been like, okay, well, I'm not playing in the NHL this season. And then all of a sudden, Montembeault struggles, Allen gets hurt, and he gets called up. What an opportunity, an unexpected opportunity for a kid trying to prove himself. Last year, he didn't look good when they called him up. He looked much better last night, much more calmer. And what an opportunity for the kid. Here it is. Here's his chance to show that he should be or could be the Canadiens goalie of the future. And hopefully they keep playing him. And even when Jake Allen comes back, put Montembeault on waivers, send him to Laval and split the goaltending duties between Allen and Primeau, because we've seen that, Jake Allen can't handle that workload of playing 13 out of 14 games or whatever it was before he got hurt. So hopefully Cayden Primeau he impressed me. Hopefully he did enough to impress the coaching staff and management that they're going to keep him around for a little while.
Yeah, and I wonder how much extra motivation Cayden Primeau had, with them going to pick up Samuel Montembeault, not having Cayden Primeau as the backup to Jake Allen. And you were looking at the situation that you could tell Dominic Ducharme was not comfortable playing Samuel Montembeault. So he was really riding Jake Allen. As you mentioned, Stu, it wasn't the ideal situation for him. Jake Allen gets hurt. He gets called up, and it's a perfect opportunity for him to show management, maybe you made the wrong decision, and I'm the guy who can fill in right now with Carey Price not available to play. For years he's been talked about as the heir to the Montreal Canadiens goaltender situation once Carey Price does move on from his time here in Montreal. And then he had a shaky season, and I think some people were wondering, do they have a plan when it comes to their goaltending situation? Is Cayden Primeau a bust? Has he already peaked? And his performance against the New York Rangers showed that that was not the case, that he is a player who is able to be, a solid goaltender for the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, Julian, you're talking about trying to be a little bit positive. I wrote a column earlier this week. If there's a positive way to look at this season, the next 64 games should be looked at as a training camp preseason for next season. They're not going anywhere this year. They're reaching a point quickly where losses are going to help them more than wins as far as the draft next season. So instead of playing Jake Allen and playing Montembeault and trying to get a win here and there and finish 26th in the overall standings instead of 29th, it's an opportunity to play the kids, play Paling, play Primeau, bring Caulfield back up, play the young kids and let them play and let them live with their mistakes, because you can afford to live with their mistakes now, because this season's a write-off. Correct their mistakes, put them back out. Hopefully they don't do it again. If they do, correct them again and give them the opportunity to play without that pressure where every time they make a mistake, they're going to be scratched. It's like a 64 game preseason. It doesn't matter anymore, the wins or losses. If they're not going into playoffs, use this as a development season the rest of the season. And I think fans, I've had a lot of my friends saying they're not even watching the games on TV anymore. At least if the young guys are up there, I think people might be more interested in watching on TV and maybe going to the games to watch Cole Caulfield, watch Primeau and the players of the future, because the way it's going right now, it's ugly and it's boring hockey and it's hard to watch.
I agree, Stu, and I think it's an earned situation. I look at their fourth line with Paling and Bazil and Pezzetta.
Pezzetta.
I mean, these guys they did one heck of a job out there. I mean, they were all over the Rangers and creating a lot of havoc, and they deserved a lot more. And I hope that they do get more because they're earning the opportunity to play and log some minutes and get better as a group. And I'm assuming that they're going to see that those kind of guys are contributing in a positive way, and they're going to give them more opportunity to play.
Yeah. Well, you can't say guys like Pezzetta aren't trying to make the most of their opportunity. I'm glad we mentioned Ryan Paling as well, because I think he's had a pretty decent last few days as well. We have to mention some kind of negative here because the Canadiens are in the place that they are for a reason. But if you could whittle it down to one single problem, what is that single big problem that has the Canadiens in the position that they're in right now?
They can't score. And it's been a problem with this team for a long time. They've scored 2 goals or less in every single one of their losses. And as our Michel Therrien used to say, and he was correct, you need 3 goals to win a game in the NHL. And they can't score 3 goals in a game. They're averaging 2 goals a game. I was looking at the stats this morning. Suzuki, Anderson, Hoffman, and Sherratt are tied for the team lead in goals with 4. Ben Sherratt is tied for the team lead in goals. I looked at the NHL stats. There's 91 players in the NHL who have scored 5 goals or more. 91. None of them are with the Canadiens. I looked up Nick Suzuki, who leads the Canadiens in scoring with 4 goals and 10 assists for 14 points. He ranks 52nd in the NHL in scoring. This team can't score. This is a team, the last time the Canadiens had a player finish the season in the top 10 in NHL scoring was Mats Naslund in 1986, which is remarkable.
Oh, I wanted you to make us guess it.
Which is remarkable when you think about it. He was the last guy who finished 8th. That's 1985-86. Rick was playing back then. So this team can't score, and it continues over and over and over. And as I mentioned earlier, bring up the young guys. Bring up Cole Caulfield. At least he can score. Right? He didn't score the 10 games he was here. He was squeezing the stick a bit, but bring him up and just tell him, just play. You got 64 games you're going to play. We're not, just play the game, and maybe then with that less pressure on them, the goals will come. And I think fans would, at this point, would rather watch Cole Caulfield at least than watch some of these other guys that are skating around doing nothing.
Well, not only can they not score goals, but they can't defend either. That, to me, is one of the biggest problems, is their defensive system. I can't really understand what is going on. I know they practice it, but it doesn't really seem to work. There's so many times that a goal goes in and you look and say, why was everyone opened? Like, what were you guys all doing? Just standing around and watching the other team, have a perfect opportunity to score a goal. Like, this is something that should not be done in an NHL level like this. And they just seem super disorganized, that it's something that they just can't seem to fix. And Rick, you could probably speak more to this, but it's just super puzzling to me, the way that they're playing defensively.
No, yeah, I agree with you, Jess. I mean, you look at the way that things unfold in their defensive zone, and obviously my specialty was taking care of the defensive part of the game, and I get really concerned when I see a lot of guys not understanding or not getting what the responsibilities are away from the puck, and they're leaving a lot of open room and space and time for the opposition to have great scoring chances. And I don't like to see guys running all over the place when you have a winger on one side and then he's on the other side. You got your centerman, you got 2D all over the place. So right now it seems to be mass confusion as far as what they're supposed to be doing on the defensive part of their game. And this is hurting them. And you look at every game that they play, they have given up some of the greatest scoring chances, like point blank scoring chances to the opposition through just lack of defensive zone coverage. And I don't know whether they're playing a man-on-man. I don't know if they're playing a zone, what exactly they're doing, other than it's not working. And in order for them to get their act going, they have to start in the defensive zone to shore that up, to eliminate a lot of the scoring chances against, and then, worry about the offense afterwards. But right now, it's horrific what I'm seeing happening in the defensive zone. And I feel sorry for whoever is in net to have to deal with some of the point blank scoring chances that they're giving up just through missed job by the defenders.
Yeah, there's times every game, Rick, and the Rangers game was the same thing, where it looks like the other team's on a power play when they're not. mean, there's games at the Bell Center. I've been in the press box and going, are they in a power play? And you look in the penalty box, there's nobody in the penalty box, and there's 5 Canadians on the ice, and it's like a power play for 2 minutes in their defensive zone, or they're running around. They can't even touch the puck. It's almost like the Harlem Globetrotters passing the ball around. Nobody can stop them, and the Habs or the Washington Generals out there. It's been really bad. I mean, you ask what's the biggest problem with the Canadiens? Everything. They rank as just they rank the bottom of the league in offense. They rank near the bottom of the league in defense. They rank near the bottom of the league in goal differential. They rank near the bottom of the league in power play, penalty killing, face-offs. They're bad at everything.
And while we continue the topic of discussing defensemen and the defense for the Montreal Canadiens, why not focus a little bit of time on Jeff Petry? 2 assists in 18 games, and that's on the offensive side of things. On the defensive side, he has not looked that good. A bit of a shell of himself from a guy who a lot of people considered for quite some time to be the true number 1 defenseman on this team, even with Shea Weber in the lineup. What do you think is the reason behind Jeff Petry's decline in play this year?
I think it's a combination of things. A short offseason. If you think about him throughout the playoffs, he was injured. Everyone remembers his injury. And I think he didn't necessarily have time to fully heal from it. And then he's right back into the season. So maybe that could be that he's not playing at 100%. Also, the fact that he has no support, that there is no other person, no other reliable defenseman other than Jeff Petry. Yes, there is Ben Sherratt, but there's not that much more help with them. So I think maybe it's taking on that load that's left behind from Shea Weber, and the fact that maybe he is injured, and it's injuries from during the Stanley Cup playoff run that had a huge impact on his body. And don't forget, he's turning 34 next month. And in reality, that's not very old, but for a professional athlete who logs a lot of minutes like Jeff Petry does, it's not easy. And I think all these factors are starting to catch up with him.
Yeah, I mean, he played through a lot of injuries there during the playoffs, including that broken finger. And we all remember the bloodshot eyes when he passed out and they put the finger back in place. And short summer, and then he got hurt again early this season. It looked like maybe a groin or something like that, maybe. And he was trying to play through that, so that doesn't make it easy. I mean, the whole team misses Shea Weber. Jeff Petry showed last season that he could fill a big role when Weber was out, but he really misses Joel Edmundson. I mean, he really that was a really good partnership, and Joel Edmundson allowed Petry to play his game and rush the puck, and Edmundson was always there, right? Steady Eddie, right? With Edmundson, he was always in the right position. He made it. I'm sure, Rick, you were that guy for a lot of other defensemen in your career, the steady guy who was always there and allowed the other guy to play his game. And I know he's been with different partners. He's been more of a responsibility on him, more minutes. And I think it's all just a combination of, the short summer, getting injured early, trying to play through the injury. He said the other day that he's feeling okay now. And frustration, he's got to be frustrated. I mean, this is a guy who re-signed with the Canadiens twice when he had a chance to leave for free agency. And one of the reasons was the playing at the Bell Center in the playoffs and the environment, and he loved it. And now, he's got to be really oh my God, he didn't expect this season. And, the longer Joel Edmundson's out, the longer I think his game is going to suffer it. And, they really, nobody misses Joel Edmundson more than Jeff Petry. I mean, that was one of the best defense partners, not only with the Canadiens in the NHL. That was a solid defense pairing last season. And he's not the same defenseman without Joel Edmundson beside him.
I agree with you, Stu. Listen, it's so important to have good chemistry back there with partners. And, Joel Edmundson was a classic player to help Jeff Petry in so many ways. And it looks like he's really suffering, obviously, from not being able to play with him. And then I have a concern also with, is he hurt? And if he's hurt, maybe he needs to step back and find a way to get healthy, because he's really not helping in any way right now with the expectations that he's supposed to show some leadership back there, and it's not happening. And, it's really disappointing to see his lack of intensity. He's not joining the rush like he was before. And why is that? Is he just really, fed up, frustrated, and all that stuff? I don't know. But, he's a big part of that defensive core back there. And he has to get his game back to try and, bring that defensive group back together and show example how you're supposed to play back there. But right now, he's really struggling in so many areas. It's really tough to watch.
And
Rick, who was an example of a Petry type guy that you played with when you were?
Well, you know what? I would look at Chelios. Chelios was, he liked to jump up there in the offense. Similar type of player. He would be the one that comes to mind. And yeah, he was good at it. But man, oh man, it's disappointing to see how they performed before and then see them struggle, back there the way they're struggling.
But I have to wonder if he is injured, what's the point of constantly playing him? As we mentioned before, this team's not doing well. So if you give Jeff Petry a few games off so that he could be as close to 100% as possible, that's probably better off than constantly putting him out there and him not getting any better.
That's why I still think, Jess, it's important. Like at some point, Jeff Molson has to come out and say like something like that's what we're doing now. We're looking towards next season. We're going to play our young guys. We're going to rest some of the older guys when they're hurt. And we're focusing on next season. We're putting a plan in place. And basically what I said before, like look at this season as a preseason for next season, because it makes no sense the way things are going right now. It really doesn't. As you say, if Petry's playing through an injury, why jeopardize that impacting him even more? He signed, I think it was a 6-year contract or whatever it is, or like why jeopardize his future going forward with that injury? Just sit him out and let him. And as I said earlier, losses are going to help the Canadiens more than wins for the rest of this season when it comes to the draft lottery.
If we're going to stay on the topic of guys trying to maybe play through injury, maybe we don't know if Jeff Petry's going through something, but you can make the argument he might still be. I think it's a little bit more clear with Brendan Gallagher, who there are times he's wincing and laboring through. And this is a guy who's used to being a first-line forward on this team back in the days when they had Thomas Tatar and Philip Danault, but he's since been bouncing around from line to line. The question that I have before me is, has bouncing from line to line hurt Brendan Gallagher this season? I think it's the fact that he's playing through pain, but I'd like to know what you all think of that.
Yeah, I think he's hurt. I mean, I'm looking at his game and the number of times that he's falling down. It's too often, and I don't know if there's something in his lower body that's not working right. But he's not the Brendan Gallagher of old, and he, as everybody knows, each and every game he is going to bring everything he can possibly bring to try and make the difference. So bouncing him around from line to line, maybe it's not the ideal situation, but you know what you're going to get from him, and he's going to make the guys that he's playing with better, and he's going to give his max. But my concern is moving forward at his age and the type of game that he plays. Is he going to be an effective player in the future for the Montreal Canadiens? And maybe that's a little bit harsh to say at this point when everything is going bad, but he's not a big guy. He plays so hard each and every night, and he's not getting any younger. And I have a concern that he won't be able to continue to play his type of A game that he's used to playing for his career to date.
Yeah, I mean, he had a groin injury in the playoffs last season. Excuse me. You wonder if it's not a groin again. I mean, anybody who's ever had a groin injury, do it once, it happens again. It can happen again quite regularly going forward. So I think he's playing through that. As you mentioned before, Brendan Gallagher is going to play unless he's basically on death's doorstep. He's going to play. But just, if they go ahead with this plan, it's just like, Brendan, you're sitting out for the next 2 weeks. You want your groin to be, or whatever it is, to be 100% healed. He's going to hate it. He's probably going to fight with the medical staff saying he wants to play, but just don't leave him that option. We need you. You're signed to a long-term contract. We're looking towards not only your future, but our future as a team. We need you to be healthy and go that line. And yeah, is the bouncing around hurting him? Definitely. He spoke about it earlier this season, how much he misses Danault and Tatar, and how long it took them to build that chemistry together that they had, and how it's tough when you're bouncing. Brendan Gallagher will never complain about anything, but he's sort of complained a bit when he's mentioned 3 or 4 times about being bounced around lines. And it's rare for him to do something like that. So I think he's a little bit frustrated that, just put me with 2 line mates and leave me there. Let us build some chemistry. Brendan Gallagher is their, a proven 30 goal scorer when he's playing with guys, and all his goals come from in front of the net and banging and whacking, and they're bouncing him around from line to line, starting him on the 3rd line, moving him around. Like, to me, again, if you're going to play him, put him with 2 guys that you think he's going to play with in the future and leave them together. And if you're not going to play him and it is an injury, sit him out. But again, this should be a preseason training camp for next season. Like, figure out who Brendan Gallagher should be playing with in the future. Put them with them, and leave them together to build some chemistry for next season, because this season doesn't matter anymore.
And Brendan Gallagher is that player that's the spark plug. Remember, you could put him on any line and he was able to get those players going, and that hasn't been the case. So I really do think that there is some injury that is hurting him. And once again, similar to what we were saying about Jeff Petry, this short offseason, I don't think really helped those kind of players, the ones that log a lot of minutes, that play a very physical game. And that's what Brendan Gallagher's style of game is. And it must get frustrating when you're so used to having success with players like you had in the past, having consistent line mates, and you're constantly going, you know, every practice looking at the board and seeing, okay, the lines have been switched up again. You know, give these lines a little bit more time to develop. Like, there can't be this sense of panic at the moment. As Stu said, this season is really just sort of a write-off. So let some lines develop, give them a few more games rather than seeing that things aren't working and you're starting to switch things up. So I think for some of the players who probably felt very good going into the season after making it to the Stanley Cup final, hoping to build off of that and then seeing how this season's going, it must be really frustrating. And I think Brendan Gallagher is one of those players.
Well, Petry and Gallagher, excuse me, playing through those injuries, like, let's say they aggravate the injuries to a point where maybe they need surgery in the offseason. And then next season, they're still not help. Like, to me, the entire focus right now should be on next season. Whatever is going to make this team and these players better next season is what they should be focusing on. And if that means sitting out Jeff Petry and Brendan Gallagher for a couple of weeks to let them heal, do it. If it's something that they might need surgery on, have it done this season instead of in the off season. And just, like, everything should be focusing now on next season, in my opinion.
Stu, can you tell us again how many games are left in the regular season again?
Too many.
I was hoping for 64, but don't worry, we've got more episodes of Hockey Inside Out coming through as we do every week. Thank you, everyone, as always, for your participation on these episodes, and thank you at home for watching these episodes as well. Subscribe to the YouTube page, subscribe to the Hockey Inside Out newsletter. You can go to montrealgazette.com/newsletters and look for the Hockey Inside Out newsletter. And of course, just check out hockeyinsideout.com for more full episodes, articles, and other fun stuff from the Montreal Gazette. And yeah, we'll try to find more positives in next week's episode.